talk about this verdict with my guest in New York, criminal defense attorney Rachel Kugel, and in Statesboro, Georgia, criminal defense attorney Francis Johnson. Francis, were you surprised at all about this verdict?
Well, you know, I think the prosecution had a better story. It was a story that fit the evidence, and it was not contradicted. And so I think the jurors went out and believed their story and rendered a verdict consistent with that. Although the DNA didn't necessarily, and the forensics didn't always connect conclusively, I think who tells the better story sometimes prevails.
That's a great point. And when you took all of the pieces of circumstantial evidence, the timing of this and that, the activity of the defendant, just the fact that, you know, this prowler knew which window to break into, right, in this home, just little things like that added up to a very damaging picture. It didn't take this jury very long to come to that consensus, Rachel. And so looking ahead to sentencing, what do you expect the judge may do?
I mean, I expect him to get a very lengthy prison term, and I don't think there's a lot of leeway that the judge has. I expect that you'll see appeals, and I think there's a lot to work with here in terms of appeal opportunities. You know, there's a lot of legal questions around, you know, sufficiency of the evidence here that I'm sure that they can make something of, right? Because, you know, as was just pointed out, this was a completely circumstantial case, and yeah, I think it did ultimately come down to the better story. You know, the defense, while they don't have a burden of anything, at the same time, you know, we often grapple with the fact that, you know, jurors do want a story, and they do want to have some sense of, you know, well, if he didn't do it, then who did? And, you know, obviously that's not allowed in terms of the, you know, legal burden shifting, but I think in practical reality in dealing with juries, it is something you have to consider. And here, this defense that was basically just, hey, the state can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, just simply fell short.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Rachel. And speaking of grappling, the victim's family, Rebecca's family, this is still very fresh. It only happened in February. He didn't waive his right, you know, to a speedy trial or anything like that. So it's all happening really quickly for them. And Rebecca's sister gave a tearful statement after the verdict. Let's watch.
We live with the hope that the worst moment of our lives cannot define who we are as we pick up the pieces to raise Becky's boys in the way we know Becky would want us to. While life cannot be normal in the way that it once was, such love and support does help restore our faith that the world does, in fact, have more good than evil. And as they go forward with the certain truth that their father murdered their mother, we ask that you keep Becky's 3 incredible boys in your prayers. We will move forward by leaning on each other and our faith for healing. We will speak of Becky warmly and often, remembering the way that she lived and loved, but not the way that she died. She will be missed forever and loved always.
It's so sad to think there's 3 little babies now without a mom or a dad because of this. And, you know, Francis, speaking of, you know, the prosecutors had to put together this case in 90 days, right? It was really quick for them to turn around. Speak about how much work went into that, especially now with this successful conviction.
Well, I'll start by saying when I heard of this verdict, my attention went immediately to the children and the family, and we lifted them up in prayer. I will tell you that the prosecutors had to get on it and to prepare this case. It's a monumental task to prepare a murder case. And at the same time, when you watch that defendant and the space between the defense attorney and the defendant as that verdict was read, it told me everything that wasn't said in court about this defendant. I don't think the defense attorney believed the story. I don't think the jury believed the story. But I do believe that these children have a bright future. They have a loving family who obviously loves them and will support them.
Yeah, you can tell that with the statement. You know, her sister's surrounded by family. You know, that's a blessing that the three babies have that now. And Rachel, just looking ahead, you know, what can this defendant do? Of course, he doesn't have this extensive criminal history. You know, sentencing, there's a range for the judge to consider here, but there's the firearm enhancement as well as the home invasion conviction as well. It sounds like he's probably going to spend the rest of his life behind bars. Here's a look at what's before this judge. But what do you expect, given from the defense, to try to argue that the judge not go with the maximum here?
Sure. I mean, I think the goal is to give him some hope of getting released at some point. And I think that they do that by humanizing him, by showing that he's got good qualities that are potentially redeeming, that he could still be a member of society. It's going to be difficult. And, you know, I have to agree with what my co-counsel today said. Is I have to be honest, I noticed it as well during the sentencing, how far the defense attorney was sitting from him. I don't know if it's just the angle or if it was legitimately going on, but that also, just as someone who does a lot of this and sits next to clients and has been in that position, I thought that was odd also. It did strike me too. So I wonder if there, you know, is trouble in that relationship.
Yeah, and jurors notice that, as you both know, being in courtrooms. They see that too. They pick up on that as well. Okay, well, we're going to leave that here for now. Thank you both. Coming up, the man charged with